The weight of the day bore down on Michael as he shuffled through his endless tasks, the hum of the office around him blending into a dull buzz. His pen hovered over a report, his mind foggy from hours of concentration. Then his phone buzzed on the desk, slicing through the monotony. Glancing at the screen, he saw Lily's name. It was unusual for his daughter to call during the workday, and a sense of unease flickered through him. Michael hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. "Hey, Lily," he greeted, trying to mask his exhaustion with warmth. "Dad." Her voice trembled, barely more than a whisper, and the sound sent a chill down his spine. "I need to talk to you. But please, don't tell Mom. Can you meet me at the old park tonight?" Michael's brow furrowed. Lily's words were cryptic, her tone laced with an urgency that unsettled him. "Why not your mom?" he asked cautiously, but the only answer he got was a shaky plea to trust her. "All right," he agreed, though his heart felt heavier with each passing second. When the call ended, the office and its demands became a blur. His mind raced with possibilities. Had something happened at college? An accident? Was she in trouble? Or worse, was she hiding something that could change everything? The hours crawled by as Michael's thoughts spiraled. Memories of Lily as a little girl played in his head. Her infectious laughter, the way she used to cling to his leg when she was scared. The idea of her being in distress now felt like an unbearable weight. Unable to focus, Michael left work early, his nerves fraying with each passing minute. By the time he reached the park, the sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple, a serene backdrop to the storm of anxiety brewing within him. The familiar sight of the park, once a sanctuary of family outings, now felt ominous. He spotted Lily sitting on a bench, her siblings, Claire and Ben, flanking her. Their tense faces mirrored the unease gripping Michael's chest. "Dad," Lily began as Michael approached, her voice trembling. She clutched an envelope tightly, her knuckles white. I need to tell you something." Michael crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it," he assured her, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. She took a deep breath, unfolding the papers in her lap. I wanted to do something special for our family, so I ordered a DNA test. I thought it would be fun, something to connect us to our roots." Michael blinked, his brow furrowing. "A DNA test?" Lily nodded, her hands trembling as she handed him the papers. "The results came in yesterday, and, Dad, none of us, me, Claire, or Ben, are biologically your children." The world seemed to tilt beneath Michael's feet. He stared at the papers, the words blurring before his eyes. "That's not possible," he murmured, his voice hollow. "There must be a mistake." "I checked with the lab," Lily whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "There's no mistake." Michael's gaze darted between his children, searching for answers in their faces. Claire looked away, her shoulders trembling, while Ben stared at the ground, uncharacteristically silent. The air around them felt heavy, suffocating, as Michael struggled to process the revelation. Questions swirled in his mind, each one more devastating than the last. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "If you're not mine, then who?" Lily's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Claire placed a hand on her sister's arm, her own face pale and tear-streaked. Ben, the youngest and typically the most outspoken of the three, remained uncharacteristically quiet, his fists clenched at his sides. The silence between them was deafening, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves in the park and distant laughter of children playing. Michael sank onto the bench beside them, clutching the papers with trembling hands. He read the results over and over, hoping to spot an error, a loophole, anything that could explain this revelation away. But the stark, unrelenting truth stared back at him. Lily, Claire, and Ben shared no biological connection to him. He drew in a shaky breath, his voice cracking as he asked, "Do you know anything else? Anything about this?" Lily shook her head vehemently. "No, Dad. I swear, I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought it would be a fun surprise, something that would bring us closer. I never imagined." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. Michael reached out instinctively, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault, Lily. You couldn't have known." His own voice was thick with emotion, but he forced himself to remain steady. His children needed him, even if his own world felt like it was crumbling. Turning to Claire and Ben, he asked, "Did either of you have any idea? Anything strange? Anything your mother might have said over the years?" Claire shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "No, Dad. Mom's never. She's never said anything to make us think this." Michael's jaw tightened. Laura, his wife of nearly 2 decades, the woman he had built his life with, shared dreams with, raised a family with. The thought of her keeping such an earth-shattering secret made his stomach churn. He rose abruptly, the papers crumpling in his grip. "Stay here," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. He didn't wait for a response before striding toward his car, his thoughts a chaotic storm. The drive home felt interminable. Every red light seemed like a deliberate obstacle. Every passing car a taunting reminder of the normalcy his life had just lost. By the time he pulled into the driveway, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the house. Michael's heart pounded as he stepped inside, the familiar warmth of home now feeling foreign and cold. Laura was in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot on the stove. She turned at the sound of the door closing, her smile faltering when she saw his expression. "Michael? What's wrong?" she asked, concern knitting her brows. He stood frozen for a moment, the weight of what he was about to say pressing down on him like a physical force. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but resolute. "I just came from the park. Lily, she did something that uncovered a truth I never thought I'd have to face." Laura's face paled. She set the spoon down slowly. "What are you talking about?" Michael took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "A DNA test, Laura. She did a DNA test for the kids. And guess what? None of them are biologically mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Laura's mouth opened as if to respond, but no sound came. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter for support. "Michael," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can explain." He cut her off, his tone sharper than he intended. "Explain what, Laura? That for years you let me believe I was their father? That you built this entire life with me while keeping this from me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head. "It wasn't like that. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. You were always working, always gone, and I felt so alone." Michael stared at her, his chest tightening with each word. "And that moment of weakness cost me everything, Laura. Everything. I didn't know Michael," she sobbed. "I didn't know who. I didn't know they weren't yours. I thought." "You thought wrong," he interrupted, his voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the kitchen as his mind raced. "Do you have any idea what you've done? To me? To the kids? Do you even understand what this means?" "I'm sorry," Laura cried, reaching for him, but he stepped back. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Please, Michael, don't let this destroy us." Michael looked at her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. "It's already destroyed, Laura, and I don't know if there's any way to come back from this." Hours passed in agonizing silence. Michael sat alone in the living room, the papers still clutched in his hands. Memories of his life with Laura played in his mind like a cruel slideshow. Their wedding day, the births of their children, family vacations filled with laughter. All of it felt tainted now, overshadowed by betrayal. Upstairs, the children waited anxiously, their hearts heavy with guilt and fear. Lily whispered to Claire, "Do you think they'll be okay? Do you think Dad will forgive her?" Claire shook her head, her eyes glistening. "I don't know, Lily. I just don't know." Over the coming days, the household remained tense. Michael avoided Laura, unable to look at her without feeling the sting of betrayal. He poured his energy into his children, assuring them that no matter what, his love for them hadn't changed. But his own heart was a battlefield. He couldn't ignore the gaping wound Laura's actions had left, nor the questions that haunted him. Who were Lily, Claire, and Ben's biological fathers? And how could he move forward when everything he thought he knew about his family had been shattered? The days blurred together as Michael grappled with the enormity of the situation. The house felt heavy, as if the walls themselves bore the weight of the unspoken tension. Laura tiptoed around him, her tear-streaked face a constant reminder of the betrayal he couldn't yet forgive. The children, though trying to act normal, carried the unease in their eyes, their movements tentative as though afraid to upset the delicate balance. Michael found solace in routine tasks, mowing the lawn, fixing a leaky faucet, organizing the garage. But his thoughts never ceased their relentless circling. At night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, questions swirling like a storm. Who were the men? How had Laura kept this secret for so long? And most importantly, what did this mean for their future? One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Michael found himself sitting in the living room with Lily. She had been avoiding him since their conversation in the park, guilt etched into every glance she cast his way. This time, though, she lingered, a cup of tea cradled in her hands. "Dad," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Can we talk?" Michael nodded, setting aside the newspaper he'd been pretending to read. "Of course." Lily hesitated, her eyes fixed on the steam rising from her cup. I feel like this is all my fault. If I hadn't done that stupid DNA test." "No," Michael interrupted firmly, his voice gentle but resolute. "This isn't your fault, Lily. You couldn't have known what it would uncover. But it feels like I've ruined everything," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mom and you, everything is so different now." Michael leaned forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me. What you did wasn't wrong. The truth coming out, no matter how painful, wasn't your doing. If anything, it was brave of you to tell me, even when it wasn't easy. You're my daughter, Lily. That hasn't changed. It never will." Her lips quivered, and tears welled in her eyes. "You mean that?" "Absolutely," Michael said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "You, Claire, and Ben, you're my kids. I don't care what any test says. What we've shared, the memories we've built, that's what makes us a family." For the first time in days, Lily managed a small smile. She leaned into her father's embrace, her tears soaking into his shirt as he held her tightly. That night, Michael felt a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. He couldn't change the past, but he could choose how to move forward. The love he felt for his children was unshakable. They were his world, and he would do whatever it took to protect and support them. But Laura, that was a different story. The next morning, he confronted Laura in the kitchen. She was at the counter, absently stirring her coffee, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. When she saw him enter, she straightened, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. "Michael," she began, her voice tentative. He raised a hand to stop her. "We need to talk. No excuses, no deflections. Just the truth." Laura nodded, setting her cup down. "Okay." Michael took a deep breath. "How many times, Laura? How many times did you cheat on me?" She flinched as if struck, but forced herself to answer. It wasn't a long affair. It happened during a rough patch, years ago. I was lonely, Michael. You were always working, traveling, and I felt invisible. It was a mistake, one I regretted immediately. "Oh," Michael pressed, his voice hard. "I need to know." Laura hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. It was two people, both brief, meaningless. "I never thought," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You never thought you'd get caught," Michael said, his tone bitter. He turned away, pacing the room as he tried to process her words. "Do you even know which one of them is the father? Or fathers?" Laura shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, I never thought to question it. I was sure they were yours, Michael. I swear." He stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression unreadable. "And you thought that burying it would make it go away? That you could just move on and pretend it never happened?" "I didn't know what else to do," Laura admitted, her voice trembling. "I was scared of losing you, of breaking up our family." "Well, congratulations," Michael said coldly. "You've done just that." The days that followed were a blur of painful conversations and attempts at normalcy for the children's sake. Michael sought solace in his sessions with a therapist named Elaine, who provided a safe space for him to unravel the tangled web of emotions he carried. During one session, Elaine asked him a question that lingered long after he left her office. "What do you need to feel whole again, Michael?" The answer didn't come easily, but as he sat alone in the quiet of his home, he realized what it was: clarity and a sense of direction. He couldn't continue living in limbo, nor could he rebuild his marriage on a foundation of lies and betrayal. One evening, he sat Laura down in the living room. The children were upstairs, their laughter muffled but comforting. Laura looked at him with wary eyes, sensing the gravity of what was coming. "I've made a decision," Michael said, his voice steady. "I can't stay in this marriage, Laura. The trust we had is gone, and I don't see a way to rebuild it." Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't interrupt. "I'll always be there for the kids," he continued. "I'll never stop being their father. But as for us, I think it's time we go our separate ways." Laura nodded slowly, her shoulders sagging under the weight of his words. "I understand," she whispered. "I hate it, but I understand." The divorce was painful, but necessary. Michael focused on creating a stable, loving environment for Lily, Claire, and Ben, ensuring they knew they were his priority. Over time, the wounds began to heal, though scars remained. Laura, too, found her path, seeking forgiveness and growth in her own way. For Michael, the truth had shattered his world, but it also offered him a chance to rebuild, a chance to create a life rooted in honesty and resilience. And though the journey was far from easy, he faced it with the unwavering love of a father and the quiet strength of a man who had chosen to move forward. The months that followed were a delicate balancing act for Michael. He moved into a modest house a few blocks away, ensuring he could still be close to the children. It wasn't easy adjusting to life as a single parent, but he was determined to provide them with the stability they deserved. The house was smaller, quieter, but Michael worked to make it feel like a home, a safe haven where his children could come and feel loved, no matter the circumstances. Each evening, they gathered around the dinner table, a tradition Michael was adamant about keeping alive. He learned how to make their favorite meals, even if it meant calling Claire down to the kitchen to rescue him when he misread a recipe. These moments, small but significant, became the glue that held them together. One night, as they sat eating spaghetti, Ben finally broke his silence. "Dad," he said, twirling his fork nervously, do you think Mom still loves us? Even after everything?" Michael set his fork down, looking at his youngest son with a tender gaze. "Of course she does, Ben. Your mom made mistakes, big ones, but her love for you hasn't changed. She's your mother, and nothing will ever take that away." Ben nodded, though the doubt lingered in his eyes. It wasn't until later, when Michael was tucking him into bed, that Ben whispered, "I'm glad you stayed with us, Dad." Michael kissed his forehead, his chest tightening with emotion. "I'll always stay with you, buddy. Always." Meanwhile, Laura was facing her own challenges. The empty house echoed with memories of the family she had lost, and though she still saw the children regularly, the absence of their daily presence was palpable. She threw herself into therapy, determined to confront the choices that had led her to this point. It wasn't just about seeking forgiveness from Michael or the kids. It was about forgiving herself and finding a way to rebuild her life. Her sessions with her therapist, Janet, became a lifeline. They delved into the loneliness she had felt during her marriage, the insecurities she hadn't voiced, and the regret that consumed her now. Slowly, she began to find clarity. She reached out to her children, not with pleas for forgiveness, but with small, meaningful gestures, handwritten notes, heartfelt conversations, and time spent together whenever they were willing. Claire, the middle child, was the first to soften. She and Laura shared a quiet afternoon in the park one Saturday, reminiscing about happier times. "I miss when we'd all come here together," Claire admitted, kicking at the fallen leaves. "It felt simpler." Laura nodded, her voice soft. "I miss it too, Claire, and I'll do everything I can to make things better, even if it's just in small ways." Michael's own healing journey took him in unexpected directions. After months of therapy, he found himself drawn to a support group for single parents. At first, he was hesitant, unsure if he wanted to share his story with strangers. But the group offered a sense of camaraderie he hadn't realized he needed. They listened without judgment, their own stories of heartbreak and resilience reminding him that he wasn't alone. One evening, a woman named Sarah shared her story of rebuilding her life after a painful divorce. Her words struck a chord with Michael, and after the meeting, they lingered to talk. Sarah's warmth and understanding felt like a balm to his wounded heart, and over time, their conversations turned into friendship. It wasn't romance. Not yet. But it was a connection, a reminder that life could hold new beginnings even after the darkest chapters. At home, Michael continued to nurture his relationship with his children. Lily began to take an interest in genealogy again, though this time she approached it with a more cautious curiosity. She and Michael spent hours poring over old family albums, piecing together the stories of their ancestors. It became a bonding experience, one that allowed Michael to reaffirm his role as her father, no matter what biology said. "I found this," Lily said one afternoon, holding up a faded photograph of a man in a military uniform. "Grandpa used to tell me stories about him. His dad, right?" Michael smiled, taking the photo from her. "That's right. Your great-grandfather. He was a pilot during the war. Brave, stubborn, and probably a little reckless." Lily laughed, the sound bringing a warmth to Michael's chest. "Sounds familiar." "Hey," Michael said, feigning offense, but his grin betrayed him. Moments like these reminded him that the bonds they shared were far stronger than any DNA test could ever define. The months stretched into a year, and the rhythm of their lives began to settle. Michael and Laura maintained a respectful co-parenting relationship, ensuring the children never felt torn between them. Claire graduated high school with honors, her siblings cheering her on from the audience. Michael beamed with pride, his heart swelling as she crossed the stage to accept her diploma. After the ceremony, as the family posed for photos, Laura pulled Michael aside. "Thank you," she said, her voice sincere, "for everything you've done for the kids, for being the anchor they needed." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. "They deserve nothing less." "And what about you?" Laura asked hesitantly. "Have you found what you need?" Michael considered her question carefully. "I think I'm getting there. It's not easy, but I'm learning to let go of the anger. For the kids' sake, and for mine." Laura smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're a good man, Michael. Better than I deserved." He didn't respond, but the softness in his gaze conveyed his forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. As time went on, the pain of the past began to fade, replaced by the resilience that comes from overcoming adversity. The family, though changed, remained strong. Michael's love for his children was unshakable, and the bond they shared only grew deeper as they navigated life's challenges together. The truth, painful as it had been, had ultimately set them on a path toward healing. And though the scars of betrayal would always remain, they served as a reminder of the strength they had found in each other and the hope that lay ahead.